Hey everybody, hope you're well. Sorry, I'm a little frustrated right now. I made a video just minutes ago and then I went to watch it and I realized that I hadn't turned my mic on. Anyway, so I'm doing it again. I don't have my saxophone. It's at the shop and I've been kind of in a weird headspace with saxophone. I don't know. It's really strange. I don't know if it's like the horn, which I just feel like I'm just super frustrated as I play. I've got to exert more air and things just aren't coming out. And anyway, there it is the horn, but it's also me. Just a weird time right now, saxophone wise. So I'll figure it out. But in the meantime, I'm going to tell you a story because I talked about this before on the channel. I did actually take a lesson with Chris Potter years ago. I have no video proof of this. I have no photographic proof of this. Man, I wish I did. But I did actually take a lesson with Chris. So it was only one lesson, a couple hours long, and I think it was great. I mean, it was great in that I actually was in the presence of Chris Potter playing my saxophone, and yeah. So there you go. So let me give you the circumstances around it. There was a great jazz club in Philadelphia at one point, and it was a long-running jazz club called Ortlieb's Jazz House. It was an old brewery for Ortlieb's beer. So a little thin building or room that they had this little jazz club in, and anybody who was, or everybody who was anybody in Philadelphia jazz scene played there. Plus, multiple just killer players from New York would come down. Just great artists would play at Ortlieb's, and they had music almost every night, I think. So I went there a lot when I was at Temple University because it was about 10 minutes away from Temple's campus. So I would go in there and watch many, many artists. Larry McKenna played there all the time, at least a couple times a month, if not more. And he would do a lot of tenor battles with this other saxophonist, Bootsy Barnes. And they both have since passed. But wow, what incredible music was made there. Mickey Roker played drums there in the house band, Arthur Harper, Sid Simmons on piano. I mean, just incredible, incredible players were there at Ortlieb. So, we were blessed to go and see them. So anyway, Chris Potter would come and play at Ortlieb's. Now, he's a couple of years younger than me, but I remember being at Temple and hearing about Chris for the first time, hearing about this phenom, this young phenom. And I heard about it through John Swana, this great trumpet player who actually had Chris Potter on his first album on the Crisscross label. So I saw Chris a few times in Philadelphia and always was just blown away, thinking like, man, how can this guy be just this great? So anyway, fast forward a few years, my wife and I'm married now, out of Temple University, living in a place in New Jersey, living in a house. And I see that Chris is going to be at Ortlieb's, and I asked my wife, hey, let's go get dinner and go hear Chris. And she was like, okay, great. Ortlieb's had good food too. So we went to Ortlieb's. We showed up a little bit early, and we're going to have dinner. And of course, we walk in, and there's maybe two people in the whole club, and one of them is Chris. And he's sitting there by himself eating dinner. Now, I didn't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that kind of fanboy, but of course I was. So I went up to Chris and just struck up a conversation. I apologized. Like, I didn't want to interrupt his dinner, but, it's Chris Potter, and I don't get a chance to talk to him. So he was super gracious and really kind. And in the midst of the conversation, I asked him, I was like, Chris, do you ever teach privately when you're in town? Because he would do like 2 nights in a row. He would do like a Friday, Saturday. And there were a few different clubs in Philadelphia that artists would play, Ortlieb's and Chris's and different places. So, and he was down, he was living in New York, so he would come down and play those like 2-nighters. And he said to me, well, no, I haven't yet, but I'm not opposed to it. I was like, oh, well, great. I would love to be able to study with you, take a lesson with you when you're in town again. And we went on a Friday night to hear him. And he said, well, I'm back here tomorrow night. Do you want to do it tomorrow? I was like, yeah, that would be great. So he said, pick me up at the train station, pick me up at 30th Street Station, because he was taking the train down from New York City. And I mean, imagine this. Imagine in this day and age. But Chris, for whatever reason, I guess I had a trusting face. Chris was like, yeah, sure. I guess maybe because I was there with my wife, that makes a difference, obviously. But I don't know. I guess he looked at me and was like, okay, he's probably not a serial killer. I don't know. But he was like so open to this. And so I picked him up the next day, 30th Street Station. and took him back to my house in New Jersey and got like a 2 hour lesson with Chris. Now, what did I learn in those 2 hours? Well, first off, I learned that he is as unbelievable as I've ever heard. I mean, just, he's no joke, but incredibly humble, super, super nice guy, really soft spoken. So, what did we do in a lesson? Well, we basically played duo. We just played duo for a while. And I asked him about some concepts like, hey, what are you thinking when you're doing that? And he was talking about like, he was explaining to me how he thinks about multiple groupings in different like numbers, like groups of 5 or groups of 7 with lines. And he thinks about shapes. He wasn't talking chord scales with me. He wasn't talking about harmony. He was talking more about just music. Like, how does he navigate through a tune? He's thinking more holistically, like, what is the shape of the line and all that kind of stuff. Like, if he begins here, like I want to start low and then end high. And, it was all like super esoteric, but very logical as well. So, anyway, we're at the end of the lesson, and I was like, Chris, please be honest with me. Tell me what you think about my playing and what I need to do. And he said to me, he kind of like looks a little bit. I was like, well, I just think you need to play more. And I knew what he meant. And I'll liken it to actually the situation I'm in right now, where I just don't feel good in my playing. I need to play more. I'm not talking about practicing, because yeah, I definitely need to practice. But the greatest growth that I ever had as a player, and when I really felt free to play and just like no shackles, no straitjackets, like just free, it was when I was at my grad program at Rowan, and I was playing, a few days a week with these other grad students in ensembles, and we were writing and we were playing, and it was real world, like working stuff out in a group setting in real time. It wasn't me in the practice room able to stop the clock and go back and fix something. I had to actually function in real time. And that's what Chris was talking about. I mean, Chris was playing all the time, so he was so incredibly free. Now, Chris is prodigious. He just, I don't think there's a greater tenor saxophone player. Well, sorry, not tenor saxophone. I don't think there's a greater saxophone player alive right now than Chris. Just from what he can do conceptually on the horn and improvisationally, he and Brad Meldau to me are just two of the just incredible icons improvisationally of what they can do. But being able to play in a group setting, so really, like, I think that I'm struggling right now as a player because I'm not playing in group settings enough. And then when I do go and play in group settings, since I'm not doing it, I'm not as comfortable. And I think that's what Chris was getting at. So the more you can play in groups and with others, the better you're going to be, the more free you're going to be, because then you're going to be more comfortable interacting. All those things that you're working on in the practice room, or all things I work on in the practice room, they need to be worked out on a bandstand as well. Like we need to be able to work them through in real time without safety nets of the practice room or the metronome, or just being able to stop, and then start again. No, it's got to be like, okay, when I mess up, what happens? How do I continue on? So if I trip, I don't fall. I just continue on. And so that was kind of what I think Chris was getting at. But yeah, so then the lesson ended. I took him to Ortlieb's for his gig, and then I had a gig in Philadelphia that night as well, and that was the absolute worst playing I think I've ever done in my life. I was so messed up in such a weird headspace from having a lesson with Chris Potter. I couldn't even like function on the saxophone. I was still processing that whole 2 hours. So it was a great time. He played my horn. I played his. At that point, I had a silver balanced action. Beautiful horn. I don't have that anymore, but it was an old like 37,000 series. That may even be just, I don't think it was an SBA. I guess it was a balanced action. Anyway, whatever. Awesome time. Again, I have no proof that this happened, but I'm not lying to you. I actually did have a lesson with Chris Potter. He probably doesn't remember, and I wouldn't remember either. I mean, if I was Chris and it was me, I wouldn't remember me either. But it was very memorable for me because there in my house was Chris Potter, and we're playing duo. All right, everybody, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Have a great weekend. See you soon.